He was dressed in a sharp suit, seated in first class, and held more power than anyone on the flight imagined. But when the cabin crew decided to judge a man by his skin, they didn't realize they were about to lose everything in just 10 minutes. The flight from New York to Los Angeles was scheduled to depart on time at 10:45 a.m., a routine cross-country trip for most travelers. But for Darnell Hughes, this morning's flight carried a quiet significance. The day had already begun with a flurry of phone calls, finalized contracts, and one particularly important message confirming his firm's acquisition of a majority share in one of the country's largest commercial airlines. The ink was barely dry on the paperwork, yet Darnell chose to fly anonymously on this flight, not out of secrecy, but out of principle. Darnell believed in experiencing things firsthand at ground level, whether that was assessing a company's performance or, in this case, evaluating the airline's service culture from within. Clad in a crisp navy suit with golden cufflinks and freshly polished Oxfords, he boarded quietly, not expecting a red carpet, but at least the courtesy afforded to any other first-class passenger. He greeted the gate attendant with a polite nod and took his place in seat 1A, storing his tablet and leather briefcase under the seat in front of him, his posture relaxed, yet commanding. He didn't demand attention, yet his aura exuded quiet authority, the kind that didn't need introduction. Darnell was a black man who had climbed every ladder society tried to pull from under him. From South Side Chicago to Ivy League boardrooms, he had been told no more times than he could count, and each denial had only sharpened his resolve. Today, he wasn't on this flight as a CEO, but as a paying customer, and what happened next wasn't just a misstep in service, it was a lesson in how subtle bias still thrived, even 30,000 feet above the ground. As the plane ascended into cruising altitude, the cabin crew began their service. Darnell was reviewing fiscal data on his tablet, his fingers tapping gently against the screen, when the lead flight attendant, a woman in her mid-30s with platinum blonde hair pulled tight into a bun, approached his row. She seemed to scan him momentarily, her eyes flicking to the seat number, then to Darnell himself, as if assessing whether he belonged there. "Would you care for meals, sir?" she asked, her tone rigid, professional, but not warm. Darnell smiled politely. "Yes, I'll have the filet mignon with asparagus and the Bordeaux, please," he said, referring to the listed options in the first-class menu handed out earlier. There was a pause, almost imperceptible, before the attendant responded with a strained smile. "I'm sorry, that meal is reserved for our first-class guests," she replied tersely. Darnell blinked once. "I believe I am in first class," he said, his tone calm. The attendant's eyes briefly darted away. "I'll see what I can do," she mumbled and moved down the aisle without another word. 10 minutes later, a tray was placed before him without ceremony, a reheated chicken sandwich, a bag of chips, and a small bottle of water. No wine, no apology, no explanation. Darnell observed quietly, then looked across the aisle where a white male passenger, who had boarded just after him and sat in 1B, was being served the filet mignon with a glass of Bordeaux and a warm smile. The injustice wasn't loud, but it was deliberate. Darnell didn't speak up or make a scene. He didn't call for the supervisor or demand to be treated differently. That wasn't his way. He observed. He noted. He watched as other passengers in first class, all white, were served the premium meals without question, their requests met with ease and pleasant banter. Darnell's stomach wasn't empty, but a different kind of hunger stirred within him, a hunger for accountability. When he overheard a second flight attendant whisper to her colleague, "Some people really think money can buy class," while glancing back at him, he knew he'd seen enough. Darnell calmly unlocked his phone, opened a secure communications app, and typed a message. The text was brief but precise, instructing the airline's executive board to initiate an internal review of Flight 227's cabin crew, with details to follow upon landing. The message was sent through a private channel, bypassing standard corporate filters. Unknown to the crew, their behavior was already under review. Darnell leaned back, staring out the window as the clouds rolled by. He wasn't angry, not visibly. He was resolved. This wasn't the first time he had been slighted, and sadly, it wouldn't be the last. But this time, he had the power to act. The very people who had dismissed him as unworthy of the service they gave others freely were about to learn the hard truth. You never know who you're serving. 10 minutes after that initial insult, a call reached the airline's corporate office. By the time the fasten seatbelt sign had been turned off, an email had been dispatched to the in-flight supervisor, notifying them that an investigation had been launched. The names of the crew on board were flagged, and their performance during this flight was now under active review. Darnell didn't gloat. He didn't say a word. He simply folded his napkin neatly, returned the tablet to his briefcase, and waited for the wheels to touch down in Los Angeles. There would be time for meetings for restructuring for consequences, but for now he closed his eyes and rested, confident that justice, like the jet itself, was already in motion. For more stories of justice and powerful turnarounds, subscribe to Expect Stories. Stay tuned for the next chapter of this unforgettable journey.